A pizza delivery woman in Osceola County, Florida, is accused of stabbing a pregnant customer more than a dozen times for giving her a $2 tip. According to law enforcement, the victim was celebrating a birthday with her family at a hotel in Kissimmee when 22-year-old Brianna Alvello delivered the pizza on December 22nd. Alvello was unable to provide change for a $50 bill, so the woman dug into her pocket and handed Alvello the 2 singles that she had on her. Roughly 90 minutes later, Alvello was seen returning to the property with a masked companion. They allegedly went to the victim's room, where Alvello attacked the woman in front of her young daughter, then fled the scene at the urging of Alvello's gun-wielding accomplice. The victim survived, and Alvello is facing attempted murder, assault, kidnapping, and home invasion charges. Her accomplice remains unidentified and at large. Number 14. Teen Trio's Houston home invasion. A 25-year-old Houston, Texas man and his girlfriend were asleep in their apartment on Christmas night when a trio of burglars entered the residence and tried to rob the couple at gunpoint. The intruders looked so young that the man initially thought he was being pranked, but it quickly became clear that the robbery was no joke. Fearing for the safety of himself and his girlfriend, the man grabbed his gun and fired at the suspects. The bullet struck a pre-teen boy who was hospitalized in critical condition, while the other 2 intruders were treated for non-life-threatening injuries. The victim is reportedly cooperating with an ongoing investigation and has not been charged with any crimes. In the meantime, detectives are working to determine whether the weapons used in the burglary were real or BB guns. Number 13. Sarah Wright. A Florida woman is facing criminal charges after hitting a teenager at a Deltona intersection and fleeing the scene with her license plate covered. The victim was riding his scooter through a crosswalk on his way home from school when he was struck by a Chevy Silverado pickup truck. He suffered a serious laceration to the back of his head but remained alert and was able to tell police what had happened. According to law enforcement, 37-year-old Sarah Wright briefly exited her truck to check on the teen before using tape and paper to cover her license plate. She then drove off, unaware that a witness had managed to memorize part of her plate number before it was concealed. Investigators identified Wright as the suspect based on this information, along with eyewitness descriptions and doorbell camera footage. She was arrested for leaving the scene of a crash with injuries and driving with a suspended license, and is currently out on bond as she awaits her next court date. Number 12. Julio Cesar Valdez. On December 23rd, 43-year-old Alicia Montejano and her son, 19-year-old Raul Huerta, were found dead in their Stockton, California apartment. The discovery was made by Montejano's daughter, Marissa Vigil, who immediately dialed 911, and the victims were pronounced dead at the scene. According to law enforcement, Montejano and Huerta were brutally beaten by 38-year-old Julio Cesar Valdez, who fled the scene in a sedan. Valdez reportedly has a violent and abusive history and remains at large, prompting the offer of a $10,000 reward for information leading to his capture. In the meantime, the victims' devastated families are intent on seeking justice for Montejano and Huerta, who were described as kind and caring people who would never harm a soul. Number 11. Marim Benson. On the morning of December 22nd, 911 dispatchers in Las Vegas received a call from the father of 29-year-old Marim Benson, who said his son had confessed to murdering his girlfriend of 5 months. Officers arrived to find 33-year-old tattoo artist Renice Wolf shot to death, and Benson is now facing an open murder charge. According to law enforcement, Benson and Wolf had gotten into an argument the night before at a holiday party. Benson's father told police that Wolf had pulled a gun on his son and that the weapon discharged during the struggle. But prosecutors painted a much different picture, claiming that Benson stood over Wolf and fired 4 shots into the back of her head. Outside the courtroom following Benson's arraignment on December 26th, a fight broke out between his supporters and Wolf's family, who accused Benson's brother of antagonizing them. Wolf's father charged at the brother in the building's lobby and was escorted to his car by court marshals. A verbal confrontation ensued in the parking lot, but the parties went their separate ways before it could get physical. Benson, who was on probation at the time of Wolf's murder, remains held without bond. Number 10. Rashawn Cannon. 62-year-old veteran corrections officer Andrew Lansing was beaten to death by an inmate on Christmas morning while working at the Ross Correctional Institute in Chillicothe, Ohio. The killer, 27-year-old Rashawn Cannon, had been in custody since 2023 and was serving an 8-year sentence for felonious assault after striking his girlfriend in the face with a gun during an argument. He had a lengthy criminal history, which included robbing his own uncle at gunpoint. 8 months prior to the recent deadly attack, Lansing had filed a misconduct report against Cannon for threatening to kill someone, although it's unclear whether Lansing was the target of the threat. During a previous prison stint, Cannon had admitted to struggling with impulse control despite participating in dozens of rehabilitative programs during his incarceration. He was moved to a different prison following Lansing's death and is expected to face charges. Number 9. Thomas Campbell Bolling von Goetz. Chaos broke out among Maryland churchgoers on Christmas Eve courtesy of 56-year-old Thomas Campbell Bolling von Goetz, who's accused of wreaking havoc on 2 Catholic houses of worship. The bizarre crime spree began at around 5 in the evening when von Goetz entered the Holy Angels Catholic Church in the Community Avenue during Mass and dropped an onion in the aisle while approaching the altar. Before leaving, he pelted tangerines at a parishioner who had followed him outside. Hours later, the suspect entered the St. Francis Xavier Catholic Church in Leonardtown during midnight Mass and poured whiskey into the holy water. Von Goetz also allegedly made threats and tried hitting parishioners with a whiskey bottle as they fought to subdue him. They managed to detain him until law enforcement arrived. Von Goetz is charged with assault, disorderly conduct, defacing religious property, obstructing a religious exercise, disturbing the peace, threat of mass violence, and religious crime against a group. Number 8. Faith Page Goins. 40-year-old Faith Page Goins of San Antonio, Texas, is facing a murder charge for killing her common-law husband, Thomas Calavera Jr., who was found dead from a gunshot wound to the face inside a closet at his home. Police made the discovery during a welfare check, which was carried out after the discovery of Calavera's burning truck about 150 miles away in Port O'Connor. Calhoun County deputies found Goins paddling in a kayak nearby with severe burn injuries and Calavera's ID in her possession. She reportedly confessed to killing Calavera, stealing his truck and setting the vehicle ablaze, and was taken into custody on suspicion of murder and arson, causing serious bodily injury or death. Goins remains in custody and authorities have yet to reveal a motive for the crime. Number 7. Azerbaijan Airlines Flight J28243. Over 3 dozen people were killed on Christmas Day when Azerbaijan Airlines Flight J28243 was shot down by a suspected anti-aircraft missile. The passenger jet was en route from the Azerbaijani capital of Baku to the Chechnyan capital of Grozny and had changed course after failing to land in heavy fog when it began experiencing external physical and technical interference. It crashed hundreds of miles off course in Kazakhstan after flying over the Caspian Sea, with the pilots doing everything in their power to try saving the passengers right until the last moment. Both pilots were among the 38 people who died, while 29 others miraculously survived. US officials are blaming the tragedy on Russian air defense systems, which were deployed in the war-torn region amid an uptick in Ukrainian drone attacks. According to Flight Radar 24, the aircraft had encountered GPS jamming shortly before the crash. A few Azerbaijani officials have said that they expect Russia to take responsibility for the incident, but the country's representatives are withholding official blame until the investigation is complete. Number 6. Ark Mayor Davis. 36-year-old Ark Mayor Davis was stabbed to death in broad daylight outside a Bronx laundromat after arguing with another man over a cell phone. The suspect, later identified as 28-year-old K-John Cesar, could be heard demanding his phone back from Ark Mayor in surveillance footage of the confrontation, which occurred shortly before noon. Ark Mayor placed the phone on the table, but Cesar remained noticeably enraged as he continued to yell. A short while later, Ark Mayor was found outside the laundromat with stab wounds to his chest, legs and arms. He died at a nearby hospital. At the time of his murder, Ark Mayor, his husband, Darius Antoine Davis, and Cesar were all living in a homeless shelter after a fire had destroyed their apartment building the previous year. Darius told the New York Daily News that Cesar had previously yelled homophobic slurs at Ark Mayor and blamed him for the fire. The grieving widower said that he thinks Cesar deserves the death penalty, which New York does not have, or to spend the rest of his life in solitary confinement. Number 5. Miguel Aguilar. 43-year-old fitness influencer Miguel Aguilar has passed away from his injuries 3 months after being shot during an attempted robbery in Los Angeles. The incident occurred on September 13th when Aguilar and his wife, celebrity hairstylist Priscilla Valles, were ambushed by 4 thieves in the driveway of their Bel Air home. Before fleeing the scene in a vehicle, the intruders shot Aguilar multiple times, including in the face. Aguilar fought for his life while hospitalized in intensive care, but ultimately succumbed to his wounds. Survived by Valles and the couple's 2 daughters, he was not identified as the victim in the attack until after his death. The unnamed suspects are reportedly in custody and are facing charges in connection with the deadly encounter. Number 4. Talib AlAbdulMosen. At least 5 people were killed and 200 others were injured when a crazed motorist rammed his car into a crowd at a Christmas market in central Germany. Identified in news reports as 50-year-old Talib AlAbdulMosen, the suspect worked as a psychiatrist roughly 30 miles outside the city of Magdeburg, where the attack occurred. The self-described Saudi dissident had been living in Germany since 2006 and reportedly harbors Islamophobic views. Following the massacre, a Saudi Arabian official revealed that the country's government had warned Germany at least 4 times about AlAbdulMosen. Started in 2023, intelligence officials had identified him as a person to be aware of after learning that he was encouraging Saudi women to abandon Islam and move to Germany, and were monitoring his social media activity in the months leading up to the attack. AlAbdulMosen was arrested at the scene and is facing 5 counts of murder and 200 counts of attempted murder. While his motive remains unclear, some have speculated that he was upset about the treatment of Saudi refugees in Germany. Investigators also reportedly believe that he may have been under the influence of drugs. Number 3. Biden's clemency initiative. 37 out of 40 federal death row prisoners have been granted clemency thanks to U.S. President Joe Biden, who commuted more than 3 dozen sentences 2 days before Christmas as one of his final acts as the nation's leader before he leaves office. The 82-year-old described the move as part of an effort to ensure a fair and effective justice system, despite many of the individuals qualifying as some of the country's most dangerous and violent offenders. Included among those who are no longer facing eventual execution are several mass murderers, as well as 9 individuals who had been sentenced to death after killing fellow inmates while serving time for other crimes. Biden did not explain why he felt that capital punishment was an unjust punishment for the criminals, but it wasn't surprising given his established history of opposing the death penalty. The decision leaves just 3 prisoners on federal death row, including Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Zarnev, Pittsburgh synagogue shooter Robert Bowers, and Dylan Roof, who murdered 9 African-American churchgoers in Charleston, South Carolina in 2015. Number 2. Jose Lucas Morphin Jr. While responding to an early morning report of an unresponsive woman in mid-December, police found 64-year-old Mary McDowell dead on a roadside near her Sherwood, Oregon home. While her cause of death has not been revealed, a law enforcement spokesperson initially said that the tragedy did not appear to be homicidal or intentional in nature. Later that day, however, police arrested McDowell's partner, 38-year-old Jose Lucas Morphin Jr. in connection with the case. On December 23rd, he was indicted on charges of manslaughter, assault, abuse of a corpse, and gun-related counts. Morphin maintained his innocence during his arraignment, insisting that he had tried to revive McDowell while addressing one of the woman's relatives. The judge reminded Morphin of his right to remain silent, which he chose not to exercise as a bailiff led him out of the courtroom. He pleaded not guilty and remains held without bail. Number 1. Drew Johnson. 33-year-old Drew Johnson escaped from a Mississippi prison on Christmas Eve, sparking an urgent manhunt as police work around the clock to locate the fugitive. The George County Sheriff's Office urged locals to alert their family members to the situation, warning that Johnson would be desperate and was therefore very, very dangerous. Johnson, who goes by the street name of Monster, has a violent criminal history spanning multiple states. At the time of his escape, he was serving a life sentence for the murder of 25-year-old Calvin Holloway Jr., who was stabbed to death in 2016. He had also been convicted of murdering a fellow inmate, Michael Riddle, who was found dead in his cell later that year. Authorities captured Johnson near the prison on Christmas Day, bringing the frantic search to an end and with no one harmed. It's unclear how he escaped or whether he'll be facing charges.